Oklahoma is looking to bounce back against the Kansas Jayhawks after a disappointing win over UCF. Yes, they remain undefeated, but they definitely had a letdown game against the Knights. Now they're looking to avoid a second consecutive letdown game against a Kansas team that is going through a similar situation, though they had a loss in their letdown game. They lost to Oklahoma State last, and they are looking to bounce back. Now, the real interesting thing is, what does Oklahoma do on their end? Now, we'll look at what the Sooners can do with this offense. And I think losing Andrew Anthony really hurt. I think that hurt a lot more than we expected it to. And it's because Anthony finally found his potential and was starting to realize it. And an injury obviously sets them back, but this is still very much a Big 12 championship team. This is still a team that is in contention for the college football playoff. It's just not going to be easy when you face teams like Kansas. This is a Kansas team that very much can hang with a team like Oklahoma. I think even despite their loss to Texas, you've seen this team be able to compete. It's just a matter of health of Kansas and what they can do. And when you're looking at the Kansas Jayhawks, there's a lot that you can like about this team. But when you're facing what is the Oklahoma Sooners, so far this year, Oklahoma, for the most part, has looked solid on one side of the ball or both. I think at times the offense has taken a step back and let defense kind of shine, and not necessarily because they're doing it on purpose, but this is definitely an offense that has been kind of inconsistent. But when they're playing at their best, they're a really good team to watch. The rushing attack could use a little bit of help, but also you have a passing attack led by Dylan Gabriel that is reaching its full potential. I think that's a really fun team to watch. And I think that Kansas will definitely have their hands full. The defense is really also where they've shined. You've seen a defense that has elevated their game, and that's really been the biggest difference for Oklahoma from last year to this year. Brent Venables has done a great job of getting the talent he has on his roster to play in his system, to play how he wants them to play. And so far, we've seen a great result. Kansas is in also a good position. I think that it's funny because when you look at what they were a few years ago before Lance Leipold came, even when he started, this was a team that everyone just expected to stay at the bottom. And they have elevated their game to the point where 5-2 feels disappointing. And 5 years ago, 10 years ago, you would have probably laughed when someone said you, hey, this Kansas is 5-2, but it feels disappointing. You would have said, what are you talking about? What do you mean Kansas is disappointed at 5-2? That's incredible. That's the change that Lance Leipold has represented. That is the change he has brought to this program, and that is the change that he's implemented into this fan base. He has gotten them to believe that they can do better. 5-2. There's no reason why they shouldn't be 6-1 right now. There's no reason why. You can say that Jalen Daniels' injury obviously hurts them, and you would be right. But Lance Leipold will be the first one to tell you that that doesn't matter. Not necessarily because Jalen Daniels doesn't matter. It's because he knows that they have to deal with adversity. They have a solid quarterback in Jason Bean that somehow they kept in this era of the transfer portal. They kept him to be the backup, and now they're seeing exactly why they kept him around. He has been a great player for Kansas to have as a backup quarterback. And with Jalen Daniels' future uncertain, having a guy like Bean gives them some stability. Now, obviously, they're looking to get back to bowl eligibility, and they just need one more win. But you're looking to make a statement against Oklahoma too. This is a team that has a good front seven. I think that that has been a huge uh, difference for Kansas. But when you look at the secondary as well, they have plenty of players that can make plays. So this is a defense, even with their struggles, they're struggling at times, but I think that they're better than what the numbers indicate. They obviously just have to figure some things out defensively, play a little bit better because when you play Oklahoma, you can't afford to have individual struggle and have certain areas open up weaknesses. The offense continues doing what it's doing, overall averaging over 7 yards per play. This is an explosive offense, regardless of who's at the quarterback position. So they're definitely in good hands, regardless of who is playing. When you look at head to head matchups, obviously Oklahoma wins most of them just based off talent. That doesn't necessarily mean, though, that Kansas can't win. I think there's plenty of opportunities for Kansas to flip the script. The secondary to me, like we talked about, I like Kobe Bryant, Kenny Logan. There are plenty of players that can pick off passes that can get the ball back to their offense. And this is an offense that is explosive. When you look at the passing attack for Kansas, that is something that has taken a huge step forward. I think when you're looking at Arnold, Grimm, and Skinner, that's a trio that's really good and honestly still really underrated. Oklahoma obviously knows what they're getting into, so they have certain players that will help. A guy like Gentry Williams has stepped up big time for this Oklahoma defense, and I think that bodes well for them facing this Kansas attack. I think for Oklahoma, the biggest thing to me is how do you avoid another letdown? Because when you look at last week, there's no reason why UCF should have been in that game, and obviously the Red River game takes a lot out of you, and maybe that slows you down a little bit. But also, you have to be able to win those games, and they did find a way to win that game. So you did what you needed to do, and you didn't let it affect your season long term. This is still very much a playoff team. There are certain things they needed to fix and address, such as replacing Andrew Anthony, getting this defense to continue to get stops and find a way to get this offense to play consistently overall. I think there are certain times where they look really good, but then they have lapses where you have questions about what they're going to do going forward. For Kansas, there's obviously the offense is really going to be a question as long as Jalen Daniels is hurt, but Jason Bean has proved to be a good answer, a good backup. The rushing attack appears to be fine. The passing attack has a lot of potential, but do they have enough firepower essentially to pull off an upset? That's probably the biggest question for me. When you're looking at the quarterback position itself, these are two quarterbacks that still fly under the radar. I think Dylan Gabriel is one of the more underrated quarterbacks that is one of the best in college football still. And I don't know, it's kind of weird to say that in the same sentence, but I don't think people appreciate what Dylan Gabriel can do. His ability to throw the football with accuracy on top of being able to run the football too is something that doesn't get enough love. Jason Bean is kind of the same way. You've seen him in spurts, but last week against Oklahoma State, you saw what he could do as a passer. 410 yards and 5 touchdowns. I think that he is an explosive weapon. He's one of the fastest players that will be on the field this weekend. And I think that his ability to play well, I think dictates a lot of what Kansas can do and how close this game is. Now, I'm not necessarily saying that Kansas can pull off this upset because I think Oklahoma wins this game, but Kansas is definitely right there where if Oklahoma slips up even a little bit, they're ready to pounce. I just think that Oklahoma is a team on a mission. They're very different than what we saw last year, and that's the biggest difference in this game.